What is going on, guys? Matt Downs with Daily Grind Fantasy Sports here to give you the edge for this NBA 10-game slate, a massive slate on DraftKings. Cannot wait to break it down. Before we jump right into this NBA 10-game slate, for any one of you new subscribers or new viewers here to this channel, we are a DFS site and we cover every single sport. Included in our DG Fantasy subscription, a $20 subscription gives you access to all of our cheat sheets that look something similar to this, where we list our favorite cash plays, GPP plays, our cores, and you can even sort here by the button to give you a player pool, which you can export to any optimizer that you want, preferably Fantasy Cruncher. We are also partnered with Fantasy Cruncher. And if you sign up for a $30 membership here with us, you also get a $20 voucher to any Fantasy Cruncher product, one of the best optimizers in the industry. All this information will change, and I'm just pulling this up to show you what it looked like last night, but this is what our cheat sheets do look like. But we are going to focus on this NBA 10-game slate. I'm going to be giving you guys my favorite plays for both cash and GPP options, going position by position. We'll be building a lineup together, going with the injury news that we know as of right now. Of course, we all know in NBA this changes drastically throughout the day, so I'll pin a post in the YouTube comment section if any of that does change. But here, focusing on the injury news, we're going to be going game by game, 10-game slate. So we'll be going over impactful injury news here that will ultimately switch up the entire picture here for each one of these teams. So let's focus on the OKC Thunder first here. SGA out for them. That does give a usage bump to guys like Ty Jerome, Giddey, and Dort, and also some increased minutes for some of these players. So we will be looking at that picture here in a little bit. With Detroit, Diallo and Olynyk are out. Diallo was added to the injury report last time, but doesn't really impact that picture because he doesn't play too many minutes. Nonetheless, this is the lowest over-under on the slate, a 205, by far the lowest. So don't expect too much offense here from this game. With Washington, nothing going on there. With Indiana, McConnell is officially out, Warren out, and Justin Holiday. Those exact same guys were ruled out last game too. Didn't really impact the picture too much, but still some mispricings there for the Pacers. With Philly, Tobias Harris is questionable. That will impact that picture. He was ruled out last game, and Joel Embiid did benefit from him being out. So if Harris is out, then I do suspect that Joel Embiid's ownership will go up because he has a fantastic matchup here versus PJ Washington. Speaking of the Charlotte Hornets here, we have Lonzo Ball, McDaniels, Plumlee, and Rozier out. Some impactful guys being ruled out for these guys, and they have been out here for a couple of slates. So you would think that the price tags would come up for these guys. However, they did not. They went right back down after last game's performance, which was last night. Now, DraftKings had their pricing solidified the night before, so that's the reason for the mispricings. But nonetheless, a ton of chalk here for the Charlotte Hornets. We definitely have a lot of interest in this team as a whole. Obviously, LaMelo Ball being the highest usage guy on their team, being out, does impact that entire picture there with the Hornets. Going over the Memphis, same injuries are still out. John Morant, the biggest usage guy, still out for them. Sam Merrill, Kyle Anderson, and Brandon Clark officially added to the injury report. So those guys being out obviously does impact this picture. It is a lower over-under here, a 214.5, and hopefully the Memphis Grizzlies can keep it close because there's a lot of minute upside there on that side of the ball. With Miami, Jimmy Butler's questionable. That will obviously impact this picture as a whole. He's been out the past 3 or 4 games. So the price tags have come out on the majority of these Miami Heat, but they still have a decent amount of mispricings there with the Heat. With Denver, we have Bol, Highland, Jamal Murray, and Austin Rivers out for them. Doesn't really impact that picture because all the price tags are a little expensive. With Chicago, we have Alex Caruso still expected to be out for this game. Javonte Green out, and also Kobe White. Patrick Williams is also injured. So with the Chicago Bulls, a lot of usage to go around with Alex Caruso, at least for the guard position. So that will impact them a little bit. However, the price tags did come up on all those guys. Not too much interest just because of the price tag increases. With Cleveland, Dean Wade's the only questionable guy. We have Cedi Osman, who is probable, and if he does play, the Markkanen's minutes do go down. They are impacted a little bit, so not too much interest there with Cleveland. Giannis is questionable. If he's ruled out, we already know where to go there. Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton get a huge usage bump. Them and Grayson Allen, of course, would get a minute bump, and same thing with Bobby Portis if he does start at the center position. So all those guys will get usage bumps if Giannis is held out, but obviously we don't know that injury news as of right now, so we will revisit that picture a little bit later on in the day. With Atlanta, Cam Reddish is questionable. If he's ruled out, then Kevin Huerter will continue to play 35+ minutes, so that really impacts him, and TLC will be inserted into the starting lineup, so don't know his news. Technically, Trae Young is questionable, but if he does play, which he is supposed to, then he's also expected to be playing the entire game. And a good matchup here versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. And with the Timberwolves, we have a lot of the questionable guys here. Pat Bev, Noel, D'Lo now, and Karl Anthony Towns. So really don't want to touch that picture until we hear more injury news. Cat was ruled out last game, so if he does sit, we already know where to go there. Anthony Edwards looks very, very good. A lot of usage going to him. However, he's been underperforming as of late. With the San Antonio Spurs, my San Antonio Spurs, nothing going on there. If Vassell is held out, minute bump here with Keldon Johnson. Not too much other than that going on. With Phoenix, Devin Booker is still out, so it does impact the usage there. However, the price tags have been adjusted upward. San Antonio Spurs should win this game pretty easily there. They are 8-point underdogs. Weird. Against Phoenix. With Orlando, we actually have the same exact injury news that we've been looking at. Michael Carter Williams still out. Fultz, Isaac, Moore, and Suggs. So a lot of usage to go around. However, the price tags have been adjusted, and they are underdogs by 16 points here versus the Golden State Warriors. This is actually insane to me. 5-19 versus 19-4, and we obviously proved that the Golden State Warriors aren't as good as we thought they were because the Spurs handed them their loss a couple games ago there. So last but not least, we do have the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and Preston still being out. That doesn't really impact that picture. And then with Portland, Nasir Little is questionable. If he is held out, then Dennis Smith should be playing 30-plus minutes in that starter rotation. Damian Lillard continues to be out, and Anthony Simons. Nonetheless, all these price tags have also been adjusted upwards. So really, there's only one team where the price tags haven't come up as much as they should, and that's the Charlotte Hornets. So we will be starting in that picture there. Let me switch over to the lineup building section of our video. All right, so starting with Philly. I really do like Philly if Tobias Harris is ruled out. Joel Embiid specifically, he's actually carrying a decent amount of ownership. Again, given the matchup here versus Charlotte, we know that Charlotte struggles heavily versus bigs. They rank 26th against opposing bigs. So obviously, I'll be all over Joel Embiid if he continues to play. I mean, he's been playing 33-plus minutes the past 2 games. Played 36 last game, so loved him in the upside without Tobias Harris. Obviously does get a usage bump there. But again, that's pending the Tobias Harris injury news. If he is ruled out, then yes, I do have some interest here in guys like Tyrese Maxey does get a boost, Seth Curry, Niang, whoever starts for Tobias Harris, obviously will play starter minutes. So that will draw a little bit of interest, but I just think that they aren't even close to mispriced, considering they are being compared here to the Charlotte Hornets value. We know without LaMelo Ball, a lot of guys do benefit in terms of usage. So if we actually take a look here, Kelly Oubre gets a 3.5% usage bump, 0.21 fantasy points per minute bump, and Cody Martin gets a 3.3% usage bump and a 0.22 fantasy points per minute bump. Also, Gordon Hayward, Ish Smith does benefit, PJ Washington, the entire team. When you take these 4 guys off the court, talking about Mason Plumlee, Terry Rozier, Jalen McDaniels, and also LaMelo Ball. That being said, so much interest here. More importantly, with Ish Smith. If he's not in your builds, I don't know what you're doing. He's $3,400 projected to play 30-plus minutes and still has a decent amount of usage here. So he played 32 minutes last game, shot 8 of 14. Obviously, he had a sensational game. I don't expect him to have this good of a game, scoring 37 points, but all he has to do is score 18 points to hit his value. 17 points, really. So Ish Smith should be a core build or a core player in all your builds. Honestly, probably the most obvious play on the slate by far. Another guy to talk about here is going to be Cody Martin. Cody Martin did play a lot of minutes last game off the bench, so that's something to note. I think they were just riding the hot hand. Did obviously shoot well, 6 for 11, 3 from 6 from 3-point. Did come down $1,000, so I think a lot of people will be on Cody Martin. I don't think he plays 32 minutes again, but I do like the upside, assuming he plays at least 25. I mean, he is cheap. At $3,900, if he continues to show lower ownership, I do like him more for GBPs. Definitely not a core play, though. PJ Washington, though, at $5,700. Love him because he's a starter. He's been playing consistent 35-plus minutes, played 38 last game. So as long as the minute upside is there, again, I don't love the matchup, but I'm going to love the minute upside with the higher usage. $5,700, he fits a lot of builds, and he's power forward eligible, which makes him very easy to slide into your lineups. If we take a look at his usage rate and how it's impacted here without LaMelo Ball on the court, he's averaging 1.03 fantasy points per minute on the season, and historically, he's about between a 0.85 to 0.9, so I do like that usage bump there. If he's going to be averaging 1 fantasy point per minute, all you have to do is do the math, and he makes up for a really, really good play. And then also Kelly Oubre. And yes, you can go to 3 of these guys just with the minute upside. He's going to be playing the entire game. They're going to need somebody to score, and Kelly Oubre is one of those primary scorers. Him and Miles Bridges. The only reason I do prefer Kelly Oubre is because he's cheaper, obviously. $5,800. It'll be easier to hit that price point. I also do like Miles Bridges. I just don't consider him a lock. However, he could easily break the slate. scored 53 points and 38. Honestly, I could put 4 guys in here. I just don't personally want that much exposure to this game, assuming that this game, could be considerably lower scoring. That would screw me. But Miles Bridges is definitely a good option. I wouldn't mind putting all 4 of those guys into your lineup for cash. Gordon Hayward probably won't carry as much ownership just because he is 7K. He's more expensive than Kelly Oubre and both PJ Washington, so that's another thing to consider. However, I don't mind Gordon Hayward as well because he also does have minute upside, only playing about 32, 33 the past 2 games, whereas Kelly Oubre and PJ Washington have been playing the entire game. Same thing with Miles Bridges. Switching over to OKC and Detroit, really not too much interest all the way around. Without SGA in the lineup, we expect Josh Giddey to get a nice little usage bump, which he does, but he is also a little bit priced up here, $6,800 in a very bad matchup here versus Detroit. Just not too many points expected to be scored here. I do think he has a limited upside, a limited ceiling that is at $6,800, so not too much interest in the OKC side. As a whole, Lou Dort's another guy at $5,400 that is expected to be playing minutes. Gotta love the minute upside, but that's pretty much all you get here with Lou Dort, only averaging 0.86 fantasy points per minute. You're going to want a high-paced game for these guys to pay off their price tag, and I just don't think that's going to happen. The rest of these guys projected below about 28 minutes off the bench. Robinson Earl was a huge letdown for me. One of my favorite GPP plays last sleep, but he only played 24 minutes, did have a very bad game. Obviously, they got blown out. But that being said, Josh Giddey and Lou Dort, the only guys I would consider due to their minute upside. Going down here to Detroit, same exact thing can be said for these guys. However, the price tags aren't as high here. They make a lot more sense. Like Jeremy Grant, we can expect to be playing, at least 32 minutes. Like the minute upside with him is also more of a productive player than the opposite side there. But more GPP plays, Cade Cunningham, the exact same thing. He's totally shot dependent at this point, whether he can cover that price tag or not. But they do make for decent GPP options. Sadiq Bey is also very cheap at $5,200, assuming he does play 30 plus minutes, which he has been. So I can consider these guys for GPPs. Again, just don't love the projected over-under right now. It's at a 204. If it hits the over, then yes, these guys do become very intriguing for GPPs. Switching over to the Wizards, not too much here going on. Did get price decreases across the board here with Bradley Beal, Kuzma, and Dinwiddie. However, they're not priced down enough for me to really consider them. Daniel Gafford's been playing a decent amount of minutes here, starting in the starting rotation. Was in foul trouble last game, which is the reason he only got 15 minutes, but he's getting comfortably over 25 minutes at a 4.9K price tag, so definitely don't mind him for GPPs. But other than that, I would include these guys in your player pool, like Bradley Beal, Kuzma, Dinwiddie, because of the minute upside, but the price tags just aren't as appealing here across the board, comparing it to the rest of the slate. Looking at the Indiana Pacers here, we have Sabonis all the way up at 10K, really no interest there. I think that's priced up a little too much. Same thing with Brogdon at $8,700 and LeVert at $6,100. But then we get to Miles Turner, who draws a fantastic matchup against opposing Washington Wizards. He is a center eligible only, so it will make it very hard to get him into your lineups, but I do think he's going to be relatively chalky, just given the matchup. $5,900, he did get the price decrease. I don't know if I'm going to include him in my core yet, but I do love him tonight. I'll go ahead and put him in my lineup just for now, just to see how things are coming together. Chris Duarte does play extreme minutes here, $4,700. However, historically, he's only averaging 0.69 fantasy points per minute on the season. So I do like the minute upside there, the mid-range pricing at $4,700. However, I just don't like the performance from him as of late. I consider him like a safe option, but I don't think he prioritizes over like the Charlotte guys or some of these other high upside players on the slate. Switching over to Memphis, I do like the Memphis Grizzlies, and I like a lot of these guys because of the minute upside. They've been in blowouts lately, so the minutes have been all over the place. But if you look at the last game, a very competitive game versus Dallas, a 7-point difference, and they did win. You look at the minutes, like Desmond Bane played 34 minutes. We have Jaren Jackson playing a decent amount of minutes, played 29, which is about his season average. We have Dylan Brooks also playing 30 minutes. So all these guys are playing starter minutes now. And the one guy I want to focus on is going to be Tyus Jones. So he did play the most minutes out of any one of these players at 34 minutes. And he's priced pretty soft at $5,600, averaging close to a fantasy point per minute. I actually love him as a GPP option here versus Miami Heat. I get it's not the best matchup. Historically, Miami does do well versus guards. However, this is a different team now. Bam Adebayo out of the lineup, possibly Jimmy Butler. Very soft matchup. Tyus Jones makes for a very good GPP option. I might have him in a lot of my GPP lineups tonight. But all these guys will be lower owned. So switching over to the Denver side, really don't have too much interest in the Denver Nuggets. All these price tags are a little insane for me. Will Barton all the way still up here at $7,200. Aaron Gordon, $64. Obviously without Michael Porter Jr. Won't affect him that much. Like Aaron Gordon, we're used to seeing in that 4 to 5K range. Morris still at 51, Jeff Green at 47. The only guy I have any interest in here is going to be Jokic, and that's because he has ceiling. every single slate, no matter who's out for them. He has this potential to break any slate that he's on at $12,000. So if there's enough value, you can land on Jokic. I do consider him a contrarian build here if this does remain competitive. Obviously, a good matchup here versus Vooch. That should be a good battle there. But really no interest outside of Jokic for this team. Switching over to Chicago, we know that Caruso's still out. Doesn't really impact this too much because Lonzo Ball is all the way up here at $7,600 and is averaging 0.81 fantasy points per minute without Alex Caruso in the lineup, which is actually kind of concerning. And if you take a look here across the board, Vooch at $9,700, Zach LaVine at $9,500, DeRozan at $93,000. So all these guys have a pretty lofty price tag. Just really don't have too much interest outside the bigger GPPs. However, it will keep their ownership low, and these guys do have good ceiling potential, talking about DeRozan and LaVine as primary scorers. I don't think Vucevic is really that good of an option here going against Jokic, former MVP. So other than that, the only guys I'm really considering for bigger GPPs are going to be Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. I think these price tags are a little too high for me. Switching over to the Cleveland Cavs here, all the guys are back. Really not too much interest as a whole. Evan Mobley did get a price decrease down here to $6,600. I do have a little bit of interest there, especially given the matchup. If Giannis does sit, he does have a size advantage there, so I do like him. Pretty easy price tag to get to at $6,600. And Darius Garland always playing a tremendous amount of minutes here. Played 35 last game and scored 54 points, 59.5 the game before that. He's guaranteed minutes, so I do like him. But outside the bigger GPPs, really not considering anybody here from the Cleveland Cavs. And then Milwaukee's not even worth talking about with Giannis still questionable. If he's ruled out, then yeah, Drew Holiday becomes intriguing at $8,500. Same thing with Chris Middleton. The price tags are a little bit too high, so you might need to take one or the other here. At least for GPPs. For cash games, you might be able to land on both of them depending on how the lineups kind of come together. And also Pat Connaughton, if he does start and play over 30 minutes, again at $5,200, he does become intriguing. He did shoot the ball a decent amount last game, shot the ball 15 times and only played 29 minutes there in that blowout. So I do like the ceiling potential from these players if Giannis does sit. Now we're in the later games here. Atlanta versus Minnesota. With Atlanta, Kevin Huerter has been playing a tremendous amount of minutes. That's one guy I want to talk about here at 5K. If Cam Reddish does sit, he's consistently seeing 30 plus minutes, 35, 31, 34, and seeing a lot of shot attempts. The one thing with him is that he has to hit his shots. He's been shooting well in that time frame too. So if he doesn't shoot well, then obviously he's going to come back down to earth. But at 5K, definitely don't mind him for GPPs. I don't consider him a lock, though. The rest of these guys, Trae Young at 10.3K, just weird to see. It hit his price point last game at 55, did not make the optimal, which just goes to show you that in order to hit your price point for guys like 10.3K, you have to go above and beyond, 60 plus points. So Trae Young, only for contrarian builds, I like him. Again, the matchup is fantastic. I just don't see him, going out and scoring 70 plus points. Clint Capella, $8,200, really no interest there. But John Collins is going to be very chalky because he's been playing a decent amount of minutes here, specifically without Cam Reddish playing 40, 34, 33, 38 his past 3 games. So loved him in the upside here. Love the usage bump. Honestly, I think he's also going to be in for another good core option here. John Collins. Him and also Miles Bridges, I think, will end up in my lineup here if I'm playing one single lineup because that small forward position needs to be filled as well. But yeah, John Collins, what's not to like about him? Great matchup. He checks all the boxes here in this matchup. Again, $7,100 is pretty cheap there for him. Other than that, no real interest across the board here for the Atlanta Hawks. Switching over to the Minnesota Timberwolves, it's going to be depending on if D'Lo, Cat, the rest of these guys do play. Guys like Vanderbilt will play the entire game at $5,500. He also becomes an intriguing target. Obviously killed it last game. And Anthony Edwards will be almost a core piece here if these guys do sit. But yeah, other than that, I'm not even going to spend the time to talk about that. It's going to be a headache here. But yeah, switching over to the Spurs, no interest here. DeJounte Murray at 10.2K has been getting a price bump all the way throughout the season so far. I do like his minute upside, however, at 2.2K. I just don't really like the sheer upside there with that price tag. One guy I do have a little bit of interest in here is going to be Jakob Poeltl just because of the price tag here at 6K. This is really just for GPPs. Just kind of there and does play starter minutes, and he's decent in terms of fantasy points per minute, averages about 1 fantasy point per minute here. Just don't love the matchup there versus Aiden, so definitely more of a GPP play. Keldon Johnson will be playing a ton of minutes here. Did have a lackluster game last game, or the game before that, 24.75, but did play 38 minutes last game without Devin Vassell. So that's one thing to note here. If Vassell does sit, then here Keldon Johnson seeing about 35 plus minutes. Gotta love the minute upside. Good matchup here. Suns don't perform well against opposing power forwards. So $5,600, definitely like the minute upside there with Keldon Johnson. I do think he's more of a GPP play though. Now switching over to the Phoenix Suns, they are still benefiting here without Devin Booker in the lineup. One guy I do want to talk about is Cameron Payne. Still performing very, very well off the bench. Did get to 19 fantasy points, and they do give him more extended run here without Devin Booker in the lineup. However, his price tag did come up here at $4,100. I consider him more of a GPP option as well. Cam Johnson, another guy that's going to see minutes off the bench here, $4,400. Did play 33 minutes last game. Just not the best fantasy point per minute player. He definitely has to get hot to cover that price tag. Don't consider him safe, so also a GPP option. And then Chris Paul, really depends on how close the game is if he's going to play minutes. He's 39, but then he goes back down to 33, 32, which are probably the expected minutes there. So this is an 8-point spread here with the Spurs. So I do think it's going to be relatively close. Chris Paul, definitely more of a GPP play, $8,300 in a pace-up spot. And also have to talk about DeAndre Ayton, with there being an obvious center option, or two obvious center options with PJ Washington and Miles Turner. I do think he's also a good GPP option with a decent amount of upside. Getting over to the Orlando Magic here, Cole Anthony at $8,000. I do like his minute upside. He's been playing very, very good minutes, over 30 minutes a game, and does get a usage bump, obviously, with all these injuries off the court. Talking about the long list of injuries, Carter Williams, Fultz, Isaac Moore, and Suggs being out for them. So he averages about 1.24 fantasy points a minute with those guys off the court. Love him for GPPs. However, I don't think he's safe whatsoever because this is a 15.5 spread, and that really goes for all these players. Like Wendell Carter Jr. does have a great matchup. The price tag did come up, so people are going to be off of him, but I do like the minute upside with him as well. Mo Bamba, the exact same thing, $6,400. Wagner's a little bit too expensive at $6K, and just given that this point spread, this 15.5, just seems insane to me. And then switching over to the Warriors, they're also going to be GPP options because if they blow these guys out, then everybody's going to sit. So Steph Curry, 11-7, nobody's going to be on him whatsoever. Draymond Green did get the price up here to $7,400. That's way too expensive. Andrew Wiggins, 65, very expensive. Jordan Poole, 62. Like, all these guys are very overpriced in my opinion. Just GPP plays from me. And last but not least, we do have the Clippers here. Not too much interest from the Clippers side. 10-6, Paul George. I don't know why his price tag went up. He sucks. He has been sucking this season. In order to cover that price tag, you have to get to about 53 points, and then to even take down the GPP, you have to get closer to 60 to 70 points, and he just hasn't done that. The matchup's good, but he just hasn't been good. So Paul George, really not too much interest there, but I do like Reggie Jackson in terms of minute upside. Always playing 30-plus minutes at a 6K price tag. He's only 6'2 now in a very good matchup. So I do like the minute upside there from him as well. Zubac, I'd only consider for GPPs at a 5.1K price tag, and Marcus Morris at $4,900 has also been getting decent minutes here. 33 and 32 his last couple games, so I do like him for GPPs because the minute upside's always going to be there for him. Then last but not least, we have to talk about the Portland Trailblazers without Lillard, Simons, and potentially Little. If those guys are out, talking about Nasir Little, and technically CJ McCollum's questionable, however, it's leaning more towards probable. Dennis Smith Jr., I will actually consider him a core piece if Little does sit, because he's going to see a consistent amount of minutes, like 30-plus minutes, and he's been killing it. 0.97 fantasy points per minute. The one thing with Dennis Smith is I wasn't guaranteeing his minute upside without Little in the lineup because they just don't play the same position. But very thin rotation. Obviously, somebody else needs to score other than CJ McCollum. I do like him here if Nasir Little does sit as a core piece. And CJ McCollum, definitely do think he's more of a GPP play because he got that 9K price bump. But other than that, no real interest outside of those guys. Norman Powell will have minute upside. However, he's not been very effective fantasy point per minute wise. So it's really just going to be CJ McCollum and also Dennis Smith. And obviously Nasir Little if he does play because he's only $3,400. And honestly, that would be my core here for this slate. I got to go back to the Charlotte Hornets because the more I look at it, the more I want to lock in Miles Bridges, and it makes sense. He's going to be higher owned here. $7,200 remaining for the rest of these players, and all these players have tremendous minute upside and usage upside, so gotta love that. I have a feeling that Anthony Edwards will end up in my lineup as well in the guard position or util, and that lineup's looking very, very good for a mid-range lineup. But yeah, just kind of recapping here, everything kind of makes sense based on what we said. Ish Smith is showing the highest owned on the slate. I think he's the most obvious value play on the slate. Kelly Oubre also in my core. Miles Bridges and PJ Washington. All those guys are in my core. Cameron Payne's kind of interesting. I guess just the way the builds are coming together and the lack of guard options. 26 minutes is what he played last game. If he continues to see more and more minutes, then yeah, I'm obviously going to be on Cameron Payne. However, the minute upside does scare me there. So that is kind of a good place to pivot off of in that 4K range. But Josh Giddey also up here at $6,800. Don't love the upside there just with the over-under. And then Cody Martin. So it looks like everybody's buying into Cody Martin. He might end up in my core as well. I don't know how that's going to work out because that's another great value option. So So projected at 29 minutes, I think that's pretty accurate. And then also DeAndre Ayton showing a good amount of ownership, Lou Dort, and then Miles Turner is one of my favorite options on the entire slate. But again, these ownership projections do change throughout the day, and if you guys are interested in signing up for DGFantasy.com, you will be getting updated ownerships in my favorite core plays and GPP plays, also updated throughout the day. And that will wrap up my video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, please do hit that subscription button, notification bell, and of course, smash that like button for all of our future NBA content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your day, and let's cash.